This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Russia leapfrogged Saudi Arabia to become China's top crude oil supplier in 2023, data showed on Saturday, as the world's biggest crude importer defied Western sanctions to purchase vast quantities of discounted oil for its processing plants. Russia shipped a record 107.02 million metric tons of crude oil to China last year, equivalent to 2.14 million barrels per day, BPD, the Chinese customs data showed, far more than other major oil exporters such as Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Imports from Saudi Arabia, previously China's largest supplier, fell 1.8% to 85.96 million tons, as the Middle East oil giant lost market share to cheaper Russian crude.
Qatar-India within weeks could sign a long-term deal to provide liquefied natural gas, LNG, to Indian buyers on cheaper and more flexible terms than existing contracts, trade sources said, as India seeks to meet a goal to increase the fuel's use. The Indian companies and Qatar-India have agreed on terms and a contract could be signed by the end of this month or early in February, one of the sources said, adding the contract offering destination flexible cargoes and lower pricing, would run until at least 2050, possibly longer. It would extend contracts set to expire in 2028 for the supply of 8.5 million metric tons per year, TPY, LNG to Indian buyers and play a part in meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi's aim to raise the share of natural gas in the country's energy mix to 15% by 2030 from 6.3% now.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Russian energy company Novatek said on Sunday it had been forced to suspend some operations at a huge Baltic Sea fuel export terminal due to a fire started by what Ukrainian media said was a drone attack. The giant Ust-Luga complex, located on the Gulf of Finland about 170 kilometers, 110 miles west of St. Petersburg, is used to ship oil and gas products to international markets. It processes stable gas condensate, a type of light oil, into light and heavy naphtha, kerosene and diesel to be shipped by sea. It was not clear how long the disruption would last, how many tankers would have to idle outside the port, and what the knock-on effect would be on international energy markets.
Oil prices struggled to push ahead on Monday as economic headwinds pressured the global oil demand outlook and offset geopolitical concerns in the Middle East and an attack on a Russian fuel export terminal over the weekend. Brent crude fell 9 cents, or 0.1%, to $78.47 a barrel by 0353 GMT after settling down 54 cents on Friday. The front-month U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures, for February delivery, inched up 11 cents to $73.52 a barrel with the contract set to expire later on Monday. The more active March WTI contract was at $73.21 a barrel, down 4 cents. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Gold prices were little changed on Monday, as traders cautiously awaited fresh data on the U.S. economy and the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge due later this week, leading up to the central bank's interest rate decision next week. Spot gold edged 0.1% lower to $2,026.39 per ounce by 0348 GMT. U.S. gold futures fell 0.1% to $2,028. Bullion fell about 1% last week, its biggest weekly decline in 6. Last week, Fed officials said that it needs more inflation data in hand before any rate cut judgment could be made and that the baseline for cuts to start was in the third quarter.
China imported 10,104 metric tons of copper ore and concentrate from Australia last month, bringing the 2023 total volumes to the highest since June 2021, customs data showed on Saturday, as Beijing eased an unofficial ban on Australian imports. China has gradually eased tariffs and unofficial bans against a range of Australian commodities since a new government came to power in Canberra in 2022. The curbs on Australian imports in 2020 at the height of a diplomatic spat over trade and security sent copper imports from Australia to zero in December 2020, from a monthly average of 72,430 tons for the first 11 months that year.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
China's soybean imports from Brazil in 2023 jumped 29% from the prior year, customs data showed on Saturday, expanding the South American growers' dominance in the world's largest soybean market and eating into the U.S. market share. Total shipments from Brazil to China were 69.95 million metric tons last year, data from China's General Administration of Customs showed. Imports from the U.S. fell 13% to 24.17 million tons. China's total soybean imports jumped to 99.41 million tons, after Chinese buyers took advantage of cheaper supplies from Brazil's bumper crop to feed its large pig herds. That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.